Welcome, everyone. We've only got a few people so far, but I will go ahead and start with our announcements. First up, the board nominations for our next board term went out last week. You can find the forms on our website in the member area. Nominations are open until March 12th. If you have any questions, please contact Erica at elections@sgmpnatcap.org, and she will be happy to fill you in. Other announcements tonight, NEC registration is open. If you don't know yet, NEC is May 18th to 20th. They are going hybrid. So we are in person in Huntsville or virtual online. You can sign up now. The early bird deadline is also March 12th. It's a hot day for us at SGMP. You can find the link to register for NEC on the SGMP website. The Supplier and Planner of the Year nomination forms are also out, and NATCAP is still so proud of Chris and Kathleen for winning those awards last year. If you haven't signed up yet, Education Day is coming up on March 23rd and 24th. 6 credit hours available. We're spreading it out over 2 days so we don't take up too much time for anyone. And all the recordings will be available on demand if you pay and for the ticket, so you can still get your credits even if you can't watch them live. And given tonight's topic, if you are not following us on social media, you really should be. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. I'm missing one, LinkedIn, that's what it was. So you can find us everywhere, and it's going to play a big part in our 35th anniversary celebration this year, so go follow us everywhere. And tonight, it is my pleasure to welcome everyone. I think we're starting to fill up now. So welcome to everyone, our board. I see several board members on, several volunteers, and thank you to our national board members that come and join us and our past presidents. And welcome to all of our guests. So tonight we are joined with Susie Wagner from Brand and Buzz. I'll get it right at the end. Susie is a media, advertising, and public relations executive with experience that spans Time Magazine, Los Angeles Times, The Wall Street Journal, and Edelman Public Relations. When you have a communications problem to solve, a brand to build, or a business to grow, Susie is the person you want on your team. Through her 25-year career in Washington, D.C., she has worked with almost every household brand as well as with government and defense clients. Her energy and can-do attitude are contagious. When she's not building smart strategies, Susie enjoys playing tennis badly and drinking wine well, so she will fit right in with us. You can learn more about her work at brandandbuzz.biz. Susie?
Thank you, Nicole. It's really nice to see everyone. Thanks for joining us. I hope you've got a cocktail and you're relaxed, you're in your jammies. I'm sorry that we weren't able to be in person. I was really hoping to see someone that I wasn't related to for a change. I'm going to share my screen and can you enable
Oh, yes.
Sharing screen for me? I did a little presentation for you, so I want to make sure I can show it. So just give us 1 second to work out the technical. Oh, there we go. Awesome. All right, cool. So I'm going to share this. Hopefully you guys can all see it. Nicole, can you see the presentation?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. So this is really about building your brand on social. And I understand that people who are tuning in, it might be your personal brand, it might be your company's brand. So this conversation is really scaled to address both of those issues. Who am I and why does it matter to you? That's my favorite question to ask. Nicole ran through my interesting work history of starting in public relations, moving into advertising, and ultimately finding my home at Time Magazine for a decade, where I was promoted to be the youngest manager in the country. And then I went on to open the DC office for the Wall Street Journal, and I was the top global sales producer for 5 years consecutively. I found my niche. I'm really good at doing business with people and building programs they like, and it's a lot of fun. And that is why when I left the Journal, I started Brand and Buzz. I realized that what I'm really good at is helping people kind of refine their goals and their mission and their vision and build a brand. And then on the other side, turn up the volume so they can connect with their audience. And I look at things very simplistically. I think that too often people get spun up on the details and wanting to know, well, how do I do this or how do I do that? And I think everything comes down to the basics. People do business with people they like, and social is social. And that's one of the reasons that it's good to have a presence online, because that's how people can connect with you. We're all sort of voyeurs. And while social, isn't everything that you're going to do and your company is going to do. It is important. And it's important not necessarily to have a presence, but to be aware of the opportunities so that if you have the time and money, you can lean in and build engagement and followers and make genuine connections. You know, when you think back of the people that have meant a lot to you in your career, they're people that you liked. They're people that you trusted. They're people that remembered your partner's name or your dog's name. They said happy birthday on the appropriate day. Sometimes they got those little nudges from social media, which is what made them so thoughtful. But you know, it's just a better way of connecting. And all of us join organizations out of that need and interest in connecting, to find our audience, to find people that we have something in common with. It's why college is the best time in your life, because you're in this awesome environment with a bunch of 20-somethings who like the same things you like. And that's why as we age and move on in our world, we all look back on that young time, whether it's college or service or high school or whatever. It's that moment when you're surrounded by a community. And social networking is really about connecting with that community. So tonight I'll try and talk fast. We've got time for Q&A at the end, but a couple things I wanted to cover is exploring the different social channels. There are literally hundreds of ways to connect. Believe it or not, Spotify, which is a great listening app, is considered to be a social channel because you can comment and share on it. And so it's really about knowing the different channels, figuring out the right one for you and your business. And then we're going to take a look at some best practices so that if you are venturing into the unseen world of a different social media channel, you know how to do it well. And I've got a couple examples I think are really fun just to get your ideas going. So I've already said this, social is social, but like, what does that actually mean? Well, to me, it means it's about connection. It's about building those relationships, that one-to-one connection. When you think back on Facebook when it first started, it was really text heavy. People just posted, what they were doing that day. They're coming into town, they're celebrating an event. Later photos were added, then videos were added, and it kind of kept growing and connecting. And so all of the social media channels are very similar. I would argue they're more similar than dissimilar. But really, when it comes down to it, it's all about building better engagement and that connectivity. So here we're going to kind of tune in and explore some different channels. I don't believe there's any one size fits all. I've already said this, but I believe all decisions come down to time and money. And it really is what your comfort level is and what your bandwidth is. If you don't have all the time in the world, just do one thing really well. And that's do the channel that your customers are on, where you're going to find your community that you can chat to, that you can post to, that you can build awareness about issues and have fun with it. While most of them are similar, there are some nuances that make them all a little bit different. So this is our fun stats page. And I wanted to identify just really the top channels, because some people know about maybe one, some people know about all of them, but not everyone knows how many users there are, not only across the United States, but across the world. And so Facebook, clearly with almost 2 billion active daily users, is the Mac Daddy of all social media. And every year, one of the things that makes Facebook so interesting is they continue to grow, they continue to evolve. They started Facebook Live a couple years ago. I have a now 15-year-old child. When he was like 10, he got super into science, and he decided to take over my Facebook channel and do Sunday Science with Matt. His nickname is for Matthew. And so he would do Facebook Live. And I kept trying to tell him that the moms and the grandmas were not necessarily the audience he was looking for. And boy, was I wrong. This kid would go live every Sunday and do a dumb science experiment, like putting Mentos in a soda bottle and have it explode everywhere. And he built a following. Suddenly, grandmas were saying, well, where is that show? And he proved me wrong. It was really fun. But it's a perfect example about how you can engage on Facebook. And even if you don't know anything, like my son at the time, he started to cultivate an audience and an awareness and build a following by using Facebook Live. It became his tune-in show, and he would have me post that it was happening, and then we would do it. So there's also Page Creator Studio, advertising apps. You can create video content, post it. You can target demographics. interest, geographic tags to promote events, build awareness about whether it's just a simple content or a paid ad. There's a lot of different ways that you can engage with audiences on Facebook. One of the things they've done this year is integrate Messenger into your inbox on the page and the app. So the app has been combined and separated twice over the years. Now it's back to trying to build more following. It's interesting to note that the majority, 92% of their revenue is tied to their advertising. Of all the social channels, Facebook probably has the highest level of concern by most audiences, because what they do with your data is really not clean and open sourced. It's very privatized. It's sort of behind the scenes. You may have had the experience where you're having a conversation and all of a sudden it feeds you an ad. I've had it multiple times. They swear it's not an algorithm, it's just a coincidence, and yet I find it to be sort of fishy. So, but Facebook still is the largest and most popular audience magnet. What we've seen on Facebook is a dramatic shift from younger people using it to kind of the graying of the audience. So if you want to reach 45 plus or a global audience, it's a fantastic way to do it. Twitter got so much audience this last year. And honestly, since President Trump left the channel, it has declined a little bit, but Twitter ebbs and flows every few years. They currently have 187 million daily users. This year, for the first time, they instituted fact checking, which they never have before, and they actually suspended some tweets. You may have heard about that in the news because they were deemed to be false. So they've been really trying to crack down in partnerships with governments around the world in cracking down on deep fakes, which is a huge issue across major technology brands. They're so concerned there's fake videos, there's fake content. And so Twitter has kind of taken the lead on addressing that issue head on. They broke records this last year, growing almost 30%, even though their tweet frequency, the number of tweets that are going out, has declined a little bit, about 10%. In 2015, they almost went out of business. And then the 2016 election happened and suddenly Twitter was hot again. So Twitter is a fantastic example about how the channels ebb and flow in popularity. The next one on our chart here is Instagram. Instagram has 500 million daily users. They've really done an interesting job. I'm sure you've heard about social influencers. A lot of them live and breathe on Instagram. Instagram is a social visual feed. It started out with iconic pictures, and it is the only social channel that still really lives and dies by hashtags. Hashtags really aren't used on Facebook. They've ebbed away from Twitter because the algorithms have changed. So with your content that you post, the Twitter app will pull out themes and put them in what's trending. Instagram doesn't really do that. They still use hashtags, and the average number of hashtags for an Instagram post is about 10, believe it or not. And that's how people tend to lean in and find their channels and find their feeds. It used to be that if you liked gorgeous photography, go to Instagram. What's happened just this last year, the last couple months, is they've changed their algorithms from being a chronological posting, so you can see what your friend posted 5 minutes ago, 2 hours ago, whatever, to an engagement based. So if you don't get a lot of likes or comments or people viewing your post in the first X period of time, minutes, hours, depending on who you are and how much audience you have, it'll rack and stack it based on popularity. I expect that this will probably change again because people are going to say they don't like it. They've also changed their app to include a lot more video content, which is kind of interesting. And Instagram is the place if you want to reach women age 18 to 24. LinkedIn, and I promise I'll speed this up. This is simply the most important one if you are a professional networker. They are the largest professional networking site with 303 million users around the world. They're in 200 countries. 96% of B2B marketers use LinkedIn just to build out organic content. And I would say, as someone who has worked across different cultures, not just industries, but around the world, people use LinkedIn differently, which is kind of interesting. In America, it's very much a humble brag. You know, I will absolutely post that I spoke to you tonight and say something like, oh, you know, so flattered to be asked, or, you know, something kind of braggy. In Australia, for example, someone will say, oh, I changed jobs. You'll get a good on you, mate. So it's interesting as you start flipping through these channels to see how people use and what the engagement is. TikTok got so much flack for being a a Chinese spy software, when in reality it is really just a video consumption channel. Short, quick hit musical videos, anyone can post them, people can go viral very quickly. 800 million people use them. This is the 9th most popular social media site in the world. It is bigger than LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, and Snapchat. It's huge, and the kids love it. And again, I'm going to reference my son, who is now 15, who says he's learned more on LinkedIn, or sorry, more on TikTok and YouTube than anything else, which makes me want to call a parent-teacher conference immediately. I feel like that might be not the way to go forward, and yet I think that our kids are really consuming so much video. It's natural that they find these different channels that are not only entertaining, but educational. Pinterest is fantastic if you were looking for ideas, if you want to be inspired. 335 million monthly users. This is a huge time investment, though. If you're trying to do a Pinterest board, you need to procure a lot of content. Fun fact, Germany uses Pinterest more than anyone else in the world. I'm going to keep skipping forward to Snapchat, which has 229 million users. It started out being images that would just disappear. So kids loved it because they could talk about meeting up and their parents wouldn't know anything about it. Then it expanded into video. Then it started being geo-targeting and advertising driven, so that you could announce your wedding was happening within this 1 mile, and your wedding guests could put a filter on it, and it could be kind of a personal thing. Then it gave you the ability to share and save memories. And so again, it started to evolve to be more like the other channels. It's still the second most used app worldwide, and it's hugely popular with the younger crowd. Millennials and Generation Z tend to use it more than any other app. That's not to say people over the age of 40 and 50 aren't using it, but the numbers declined to about 4% in the older age groups. And finally, YouTube, with 30 million daily users, is the biggest video consumption platform. It's available in 100 countries, 80 languages, and you can get paid. If people like your content, you're posting a lot of videos, you can make 5 cents per 1,000 views, which if you have multiple millions of views becomes real money. So these are the most popular channels that people are using regularly. I just wanted you to have a quick awareness of them if you didn't already. And then just some fun facts. If you're using Facebook for Business, the average business responds to a query or a comment within 2 hours. The first tweet was sent on March 21st, 2000. It's actually 2006. The slide is wrong. I apologize. Brands are all over Instagram. In fact, you'll hear a lot of Instagram people calling themselves influencers and getting sponsored by brands. That's because brands really love the visual aspect and component of it. And LinkedIn tends to drive pretty affluent users. Almost half of their users earn more than $75,000 a year. And so how do you find out what channel's right for you? This is the biggest question I typically get. It all comes down to what your goals are. You know, everyone has a limited amount of time and a limited amount of money. It really depends on what your bandwidth is, how much creative energy you have for social. It's a big time suck to do well. Who's your audience? Are you trying to reach your friends and family, or do you want to engage with customers? Are you trying to build that one-to-one experience where you're using your social to supplement your customer-facing time? Maybe with COVID, you're in a lot of Zoom meetings and you don't have time to make as many phone calls as you used to. So you want to tweet more or post more and just let people know that you're thinking about them or engage with them on their social media channels. That's a great way to connect with people. And then what's your investment in terms of staff? Is this just something that you're going to be doing, or do you have staff or design help that you can get involved? So those are some of the things just to think about when you're trying to decide, A, should you be on social media, and B, decide which channel. I just love fun facts. I find that stats make presentations more interesting and more credible. Almost 60% of consumers say they will follow a brand on a social media channel to learn more about their products, which is huge when you think about it. People want to, if they like you, they want to learn more, they'll start stalking you online, they'll look through your social feed, they'll read your content. 91% of people will visit the brand's website. And if they like what they see on that website and they like your social, then 85% will recommend that brand to a friend. And anyone who is in business knows the most influential marketing there is word of mouth. I think it was in the early 1980s that Roper first did the word of mouth study. And that's where the term was coined for the first time. And that's simply when somebody tells you, buy this, do this, see this, vote that way, eat that, you look fabulous in that, you should buy that top. Word of mouth is the single biggest driver of business, and it is the hardest to generate. And what we found is that if you've got really compelling social media and you're engaging, people do business with people they like, brands they know and trust, and your public facing window, your website, your external marketing, your social is all working in concert, then it's much easier to drive that engagement and get people to lean in, to get to know you and get to know your brand. And almost half of everyone is going to unfollow you if the content becomes relevant or if you spam them with too many ads. So as you're thinking about it, what we've seen in the last 15 years is that American businesses have dramatically shifted their investment in advertising from traditional print and television to more segmented marketing, which is difficult to manage, but it's sort of the way you find your audiences. And they're spending more and more on digital and social because they're seeing that return on the investment. But it's a balance of kitschy, clever, and annoying. I'm going to mention my family again. My daughter was at my parents' house and she found this this paper I'd written when I was 17 years old. And it was about my goals. And my goals were, I had 3 goals: get a tan, get my driver's license, and get a boyfriend. And I thought, which I thought was fantastic when I was 17. She pointed out it maybe was a little shallow. But then she quickly added, successful people set achievable goals. And so I tell you my embarrassing goal story because at 17, I wrote down those goals and I achieved every one of them. But when you're thinking about social media, it's important to have some goals because it's really easy to start something and not finish it or get distracted by something shiny and move to a different place. It's hard to follow through. And if you write something down and you have goals against it, it's a bit easier. And in fact, when you come to writing down your goals, 83% of people think about something, they get an idea, but they don't have any goals. They're just like, oh, I think I want to do this. Well, that's lovely. 14% of those people start to really think a strong plan in their head. They start to think about, well, if I decide to go in this engagement, I'm going to do it this way, boom, boom, boom. And they start their plan. You know, it's the shower plan. You're in the shower, like, oh, I could do this. It's that quiet time to think. 3% of those people get out of the shower, dry off, get dressed, although I don't think this orange figure is wearing clothes, and they actually write it down. And what we know is that people who write down their goals and they write down a plan are 30 times more successful in executing that plan. And that's really important as you start thinking about social media because best practices are about posting with frequency. And each of the channels has different frequency times that are recommended to post, like 10 a.m. on Wednesday is really good for Instagram. Sunday at 3 o'clock is good for LinkedIn. I mean, and all these times and dates ebb and flow depending on the content, depending on the time of year, depending on all of these different things. But if you decide you want to engage in a social media strategy, write it down. Write down what your plan is. Make an idea about what your investment of time and money is. Think about what you want to say. And usually it comes down to your elevator pitch. So when you're at work or you're engaging with your customers and you've got that short little bit of time to tell them the thing you really need them to know that differentiates you from your competition, that makes you the person they want to do business with. Those are kind of the foundational goals that go into planning a social media strategy. Today's consumers have grown up with telephones in their hands. They are so cynical. They can search faster. They can aggregate data better. They see through the mist and they know when you're not being truthful with them and they don't like it. So storytelling and being genuine are the most important currencies you have with your social media. No one knows your story. In journalism school, I learned, tell the story that only you can tell. Tell your truth, get your facts, put in a tight package that people can scan and pull something away from in hopes that they will either come back and do a deeper dive and read all of it, or that they'll tell a friend and then they'll lean in and get the content. Because that's sort of the game that we're all in. It's making those connections and sharing it. So when you think about social, the same thing that goes into your marketing, the same thing that goes into your business development, that same thing that goes into pitching your boss to get a promotion or a raise. Those are the same qualifiers. It's figuring out what you want to say and then how you want to say it. And design is so important. You'll notice this again and again when you're scanning through magazines or websites or marketing materials. Really good design, really compelling design can pull you in and inspire you to take more time with it so that people can get your message. And that's enormously huge. These images are sort of idyllic. When you've gone through a social feed or a really beautiful campaign, you probably have seen images like some of these. The adorable baby, the travel picture, the sunrise, the vacation, the food, the puppies. And so knowing the things that are triggers, and they can relate to your business or they don't have to. I mean, think about every Super Bowl ad you've ever seen. You remember them. They rarely mean anything to the brand that's talking about them, like the Budweiser frogs. I still don't know what a frog has to do with beer. I don't think they drink beer. The Budweiser came up with the frog because we're still talking about it. Geico's cavemen, people still talk about it. Cute puppies, the Clydesdales, they still talk about them. So think about the images and the design because those really get people's attention. And then be consistent with it. So whether it's your personal brand or whether it's your business brand, post this many times a week, this many times a month, post this kind of content, and engage with your followers. If you have customers, follow them and then comment on their stuff like, oh, I saw you cut that big fish. That must have been awesome. Oh, did you take a trip? I love this brochure you did. And because social is social and it starts to build that one-to-one relationship that people are looking for. There is multiple studies that show dopamine is released when you post on social media and you start getting likes. And that is what draws you in. It's literally a drug giving you attention. Knowing that you've been seen and you've been heard are two of the most powerful things for human beings to experience. And so when you do that, you build those strong touch points, those connections. I am not going to go through all of this, but just to be aware that if you are using social media professionally, there's a ton of tools that you can use at your disposal. Things like HubSpot, there's a lot of free tools where you can schedule any kind of posts, whether it's on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. You can be thoughtful about curating content that drives against your marketing schedule. So if you are launching a new product and you know it's going to happen in 6 weeks, you can kind of build out a teaser campaign and build more frequency. And you can have those pre-populated and ready to go so that you don't have to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning. The app will remind you, it'll shoot it out to your followers. But all of those things are really helpful, including looking at the analytics and making sure that people are seeing and engaging with it. And then obviously make changes based on what you're happening. And so these are a couple just of the touch points I've already really talked about, but just reminders that don't go ghost on them. Don't come in once and then disappear. Respond, engage. And that's where we have to take a step back and think about what your time commitment level is. If you have the time to do social well, it doesn't have to be a full-time job. It can be a once in a while thing. For bigger companies and bigger brands, it is a full-time job. So just think about what your goals are, and then you can plan to make those realized. The single most important thing I tell everyone who's on social is to have fun with it. People remember your campaigns and they connect with you if you're having a good time. It's sort of like when you have to give a talk and you get really sweaty and you get really nervous, but you know from having been in the audience that everyone's rooting for you because they don't want to be up there talking. They're rooting for you. Your audience on social is rooting for you. They want to connect with you, but they don't want you just to talk at them. They want to experience and engage through really powerful visual images and strong captions and connections. Have a good time with it. Tell them a story. And this is how you find me if you need me. Susie@brandonbuzz.biz. I know I talked pretty quickly and I've got a couple examples I'd love to show you before we jump into questions. But if you have any questions specifically that we don't get to tonight, feel free to shoot me an email or a phone call. I'm pretty responsive. And just remember, my motto, people do business with people they like. And so make sure that people like you on social and give them a reason to follow you back and engage with. Now, what I'd love to do, if this is okay, is to, give me 1 second. I'm gonna stop my share for a minute and switch screens to show you a couple examples that are, I think, are pretty powerful. Nicole, I hope you can see it. I hope I did it right.
You did, I see it.
Yay! All right, so this is an Instagram account that I got turned on to today, and their brand colors are red. Clearly, the Huron agency, they're a public relations agency in Chicago. Their clients are food. Look at this. It's gorgeous. They only post a couple times a week. Their engagements are really high. This one had 441 likes, and they start every single week with just a quote, just a powerful quote. And that helps to eat up their time, but it also means that their grid, when you go to their Instagram account, looks like this. I just think it's so on brand and powerful, and I think it looks really, really pretty. One of my personal favorite accounts is Humans of New York. They have 11 million followers. This account started with one guy who got fired from his job, downsized. I don't think he was a bad guy. I just think he was in a bad seat. And he didn't know what he was doing. So he lived in New York City, and he took his camera and he walked around Central Park and he started taking pictures of people. And for the last several years, he's been taking pictures of people and asking them about their story. And he tells these long form story about individuals. Like, look how long this goes. And I'm not reading this, but apparently, her mom was on drugs and she became homeless, and then she became a teacher, and now she's changed her life. And he just walks around and meets people and tells their stories. And now he's grown it to millions of followers. HBO is talking to him about doing a movie or mini series about the Humans of New York. And you can see right here in his caption, his picture, he's published some coffee table books of these first life pictures that are so inspiring. Right now, The Rock is one of the top followed accounts in America, I think Ariana Grande beats him. So he's like in the top 3. And obviously The Rock is posting a lot about his new television show that's coming on, which sort of cracks me up. And here you can play the video and learn all about it. But it shows the power of celebrity. And his feed looks very different than some of the other ones I showed you. But the one thing you can kind of see is the powerful images and the clean design and what draws you in. Like, this is gorgeous. Like, these designs are really powerful. I had the chance to take a look at your chapter Instagram, and I think it's awesome. I think that your engagement is a little bit low, so everyone on this call should be liking and following things. The one thing I will say that can make it stronger is taking some of the text out of the captions themselves and putting it in the actual description. One thing that's really important to know is that Instagram doesn't let you click on links. And so most accounts say link in the bio so that you can get to pages. And I will go ahead and show you mine really quick, because I'm gonna make fun of myself too, because this is mine and I post a lot about my family. I'm not looking to get followers, but I try and post things about my life so that people know where I am, what I'm doing, and those kind of things. So these are just some examples. This is Christina Hilton's account. And the thing I know about Christina is she loves her job. And I loved seeing my neighbor, Chris Macetta, on this feed, because Chris is like, that's Chris. He's like one of the best guys in the world. I've known him for a long time. And I love some of the images that Christina has used here. And I love that she's telling clearly everyone how much she loves her job. I think one of the things that could make it even better is if she could take a page out of the Humans of New York story and tell some of the firsthand stuff about her job at Hilton or places she gets to go, and maybe share some of those up close pictures. That would be really interesting. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if there's any questions that you have for me. I'm happy to pull up other examples or answer any questions you might have.
So no questions in the chat yet, but we did have a few. I know one of them that came in through our Instagram story. Because I
Yay.
put the question out there on Instagram and not a lot of people responded. So come on, interact. It was, is social media necessary?
Yeah, it's a great question. My team gets really angry with me because my first answer is no, it's really not. And not everyone needs to be on social. It does, it's not for everybody. And I feel like I beat this to death during my rambling monologue, but it really comes down to time and money. Like, what do you have the time for? What do you have the money for? What's your interest level? And most importantly, why do it? I have worked with foreign governments. The Embassy of Japan was my client for several years. I got to go to Japan and film a documentary that ran on their social and helped grow their social a lot, like 63% through organic growth. People really liked it. That was on Facebook. But they had a lot of time and money to dedicate to it. They hired me to work on their social, to do Q&As with them, to take gorgeous, iconic pictures all throughout Japan, which was the best boondoggle ever. But I've also worked with regional landscapers who were brilliant and beautiful at their work. And I have one client who spends a lot of money on social, and I don't see it delivering the return on his investment. So if he's doing it just for fun, that's awesome. But I think he has this higher calling. He feels like he has to be on social. And for him, since he enjoys it and he has the money to invest in it, it makes sense. But if it's not working for you, don't do it, is I guess my answer. And then be thoughtful about the channel that you're on and what's your goal with it. If your audience is there, rock on, be there, talk to them, tweet, post, like, respond, share. But if you're just being on social because someone told you to, that's probably the wrong reason to do anything.
That makes perfect sense. And SGMP is a great example of that. I was telling you earlier, we do not have a lot of members on Twitter. We're mostly followed by
where
other.
Are they?
I have no idea. I'm there, so I don't know where everyone else is.
When I can't sleep in the middle of the night, I'm on Twitter because I like to know if the world's coming to an end.
Yes, it's how I keep up. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Absolutely. But we're mostly followed by either other chapters of SGMP or other like event professional organizations. It's so weird. Yeah, it's really bizarre.
Twitter's hard. I mean, I'll be honest. Like, Twitter is a fire hose. To make penetration on Twitter, you need to be tweeting between 3 and 7 times a day. And that's a lot. And you also have to kind of chat with your people, you've got to like, I like this or I don't like that. And you can get into a lot of trouble on Twitter.
Oh yeah, easily too.
Any of the social media.
Real fast. So we did have one question come in the chat. What are your thoughts on paying to boost posts on Facebook and Instagram?
Oh, that's a great question.
I've done some without much success.
It's a great question. And I have done that for clients too. I have paid to have posts boosted and stuff. Again, it really depends on the content. Because this audience is so sophisticated, it's just, I've been in advertising for a really long time. And I started with print, and I've done digital and television and online and social. And it's been really interesting because the audiences and the audience engagement is very different from each of those different channels. And what's happened is because we live in such an on-demand world where everyone has their phone and the focus group of one is right here in the palm of your hand, and you can create that feed that's perfect for you and customized for you. The posts do their best to break through and make those connections. And since you've paid for posts on Facebook and Instagram, the qualifiers that you can put in: age, race, sex, demo, likes, all these different tags, education. You can start to find your audiences. But again, people are very cynical. And when they see promoted posts, they immediately I'm the person who has liked a post on Instagram and then realized it was promoted. I'm like, I don't like it. So it can be tricky. It doesn't mean it doesn't work, and it doesn't mean it's not good. It just means your creative has to try harder to capture them. And so you can't just post something that's really text heavy that doesn't engage. If it's a promoted post with a new audience that you're not connecting with and you don't have the relationship, then you really want to go heavy on the visuals and make the design so compelling that people take a second to look at it. Goldfish have a 9-second attention. No, sorry. Oh yeah, goldfish have a 9-second attention span, and human beings have less than 3. So it's you've got to get with them really fast. And especially with video, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, that's a long time. And so you want to really grab them quickly.
And I can tell you, it takes longer than that to connect everyone on an Instagram Live.
Yes, I know that is true. It does. It does.
It does. It takes you a minute to get going. So.
It's actually one of the things I said, don't be text heavy unless you're using video, in which case you do want to use subtitles and captions, because a lot of people have their phones on silent or their devices, and most people are dual screening. In fact, I don't think it was NBC Universal, but it was one of the big television companies did a study 2 years ago, and it was 68% of us watch television with the device in our hand. And so you're always competing. And that's why when you're watching TV shows like The Voice or America's Got Talent or whatever, they're like, Twitter poll is open, like this. And it's because they know that you're over here and they're trying to get your eyeballs back to them. It's kind of interesting.
That's higher than I expected, but also not really.
I know, right?
Once you think about it, not really. But I'm one of them. So, and I'm also one of them. This is the first time that NATCAP is using closed captioning on our webinar. So I'm very excited that we're bringing it in. But I'm one of those too. I'm watching your video and reading it. I'm not listening to it. I don't know when that started, but it's absolutely a thing.
Well, it's interesting too, because what we're seeing is that's not consistent across the board. So people over a certain age are more interested in reading, and people under a certain age are more interested in watching, and they always have the sound on really loud. I'm sure that might happen in some of your houses, maybe when you're on a call and you hear squealing behind you. But it's not, there's no perfect, right? So some young kids like to read and some older people like to watch. It just really depends. And now
we'll go ahead and divide it with the skinny jeans and side part thing and call it part of that.
And both. Okay. And both.
So we had one other question. Could we get a list of the sites you showed as an example? That's
Absolutely.
a great question.
I'd be happy to. I don't know if you want me to drop it in this chat. I'm happy to, or I could put together like a one pager and shoot it to you afterwards.
Both. Yeah. So we'll definitely put them up on the chapter resources page on our website, so everyone can see. But yeah, and we'll drop them in here real quick.
These aren't perfect. I just think some of them are kind of fun, and that's.
I love that one. What was the agency? I wrote it down. Heron Agency. That is gorgeous. I love how they use the red and just play off of it with every picture. That's so pretty.
It's really neat. I'm actually going to drop this one in the chat too. I didn't talk about it, but there is a woman named Holly Garner who runs an Instagram feed in DC, and she just did her perfect day in DC, and she's using that content across her Instagram. And so I thought it was kind of an interesting example about how a social channel just got a major feature in the Washington Post. And so it was really kind of cross-pollinating and helping her grow her audience as well. And some of the images are really spectacular.
So Pam had an idea. If you guys want to drop it in the chat, because I don't have the polls turned on for this, let us know which you do. Are you a reader or a listener? We're curious to see what our audience does. Yeah, because I've admitted I'm a reader. I don't listen to it. In fact, if it doesn't have closed captioning, I'm probably scrolling by.
I'm a reader, mostly because I have sort of chronic insomnia, and my husband, I think, would murder me if I started watching videos. Sometimes it happens. Oh, listener.
Really? Okay.
Wow. All right. I have to ask, Kathleen Ryan, that's my aunt. And do you know the age, or is everyone roughly similar ages, or do you have a big spread?
No, they're roughly, I'm going to say y'all are my age, okay? And just be fine with it.
Me too. I'm also your age.
There you go.
Your age?
Well, Cindy is I saw that, Kathleen. It's fine. You're my age. Everyone's my age. Cindy is my age.
We're all simpatico. I was reading, it was moving. They said no. Oh, I want to hear what they're saying. That's interesting.
Oh, so like if it's more interesting than you thought it was, you turn off the closed app, or you turn on the audio.
A little bit of a voyeur thing, kind of like leaning in and saying, "Oh, I want to learn more." I mean, that's all online and social these days. Everyone kind of stalks, and right now where we're all sort of living this weird hybrid situation, I think that there's what we've seen across all the social channels is a lot more engagement and a lot more content being posted too, which is sort of interesting.
Absolutely. I feel like the TikTok may not have gotten as big as it did, as quick as it did, if we weren't all, trapped at home for several months with that to entertain us.
I have found TikTok to be very educational. In fact, I can show you guys one other thing, which I thought was so interesting. My daughter is a college kid, and she lost her driver's license, as all college kids seem to. And we had to go to the DMV this morning, and we were having a chat about this specifically. And she's a huge TikTok consumer. And I'm like, ugh, I was talking about influencers, and I was saying, I think influencers are sort of ridiculous. And she's like, oh, you're not wrong. But she also said, from a learning standpoint, like what's on TikTok, you can learn so much. She showed me 9 different sites where, here, I'm going to take the screen back real quick just to show you guys. I think this is kind of interesting. I'm going to share my screen so you can see my mail. Don't judge. So this TikTok is literally about how to, I don't know if you can hear it. It's really loud. It's literally about how to define your coloring in your room. And these tutorials. So what she was showing me is these tutorials that are all about how to either curate a feed or how to edit your pictures just so to get more of a feed and a following. What was really funny is those different videos, it was how to have a white feed, a light feed, a natural light feed, an indie feed, a vanilla feed. I'm like, those all same, right? She's like, you missed purple. And I just thought that was so interesting. There's some of the content on TikTok is just funny. There's a lot of comedic stuff on TikTok, and some of it, some people find to be educational.
Yeah, I mean, I follow Hank Green just like everyone else
I
on
don't follow
TikTok.
Hank Green.
Oh, you have to. He is very smart. And like, did you know ice is a rock? Learn that on TikTok. Yeah, Hank Green says so, so I believe it.
The rocks when you're making like I went scotching the rocks. Is that why?
I have no idea why. I did not understand what he was talking about, but I believe him. He's a science person. Yeah, so I mean, I enjoy TikTok too.
I like Bill Nye the Science Guy. I think that Bill Nye the Science Guy is on TikTok is hilarious, and I love him.
I ended up on Broadway Dancer TikTok the other day, which was entirely more enjoyable than I expected it to be, and ended up watching The Greatest Showman that night. So yes, love that movie. So I feel like all of this social media is really influencing our behavior in some ways.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't planning on watching The Greatest Showman this weekend, but an hour after watching random guys dancing around New York City because they're all unemployed Broadway stars right now. Right. I'm watching The Greatest Showman later.
I love The Greatest Showman. I think it's so good. Well, and it's interesting because there's so much of impact on our real life. I just was trying to pull up some articles that also I found that I thought were kind of interesting in the middle of the night when I wasn't sleeping. Let me steal the screen back real quick. And truly not to be political at all, but Colorado City Mayor lost his job because of a controversial Facebook comment that he made. And you're hearing this again and again in the news, and it's, a lot of people get really upset about the cancel culture, but the reality is we live in a very open world and people can hear and see everything that you do, even when it's private, and you've got to be careful. And I saw that this cracked me up today, that the White House is now live on Snapchat, which I thought was really funny because I love whenever people are engaging on social, and the idea that, the White House is like Buckingham Palace. It's one of the few places in the world that can speak, even though it's a building. And so for the White House to be on Snapchat, it just tickled me somehow. I just thought it was really funny, but it speaks to engagement and trying to connect with different audiences and understanding that the big majorities we went through in the presentation is under the age of 25 on Snapchat. Means that the White House is trying to cultivate and reach this younger future voter. And from a branding standpoint, it's brilliant. Because you want to have cradle to grave marketing. All of us who work in membership-driven organizations or customer-driven organizations, which is basically everyone, needs to kind of keep feeding that pipeline of new consumers and new business coming up the ranks. And one of the best ways to do that, one of the cheapest ways to do that, is by having social media, because you really do it pretty effectively on a skeletal budget, or you can continue to invest more. In fact, the average business, big brands are spending about 45% of their budget on social now, which is
Wow.
huge.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
become a much bigger deal than it used to be.
Did their overall budgets increase to cover that, or did they cut something else?
It's a really good question. The answer is both. A lot of money has been redirected, and I kind of touched on this when I talked about the focus group of one and the individual consumer. There's such a drive to reach that person that television segmentation, advertising segmentation, even targeted and retargeted advertising. So when you go to your favorite clothing store and you put a pair of pants in a shopping cart and you kind of forget about it and move on to the next website, and then all of a sudden that pants starts following you around, these like little cute red pants are dancing. You're like, wait, I used to open my tab, and that's retargeting. So that's the way that products follow us around. It's a little cookie that goes on your website and kind of follows you. Not cool in the EU, starting not to be cool in the US, but still a bit porous. So it's just how the digital world works. But the answer to your question is more and more dollars, especially on a percentage basis, have been driven to try and find that individual consumer. And so that's why people do the promoted posts on social, and they do the targeting.
Yeah, I was doing a challenge on Instagram. It was January, workout challenge in January, that was being sponsored by an influencer and a fitwear company. The second I tagged that fitwear company in my first post, I started getting targeted advertisements for other fitwear companies. All of my Instagram for like a week there was just leggings. That's all I saw was, and I bought so many. It worked.
Advertising works.
Advertising works.
Cool.
I bought so many.
Cool, that's it. I'm curious, how was your influencer experience? Because I'm not an influencer fan.
It was pretty good. She is a yoga instructor, influencer, which during the pandemic, she can no longer travel the country to teach. So she's doing it all online right now.
Wow.
So it was actually really interesting to see what she was putting out every day, because it was like the whole month of January. So it was really interesting to see
in January. I did yoga every day in January. And then I stopped for a little while. Then I went back to it. I love yoga. I think it's really enjoyable. I feel very relaxed.
Yes. So desk yoga is the best.
Exactly. I know we're almost at the end of your meeting time. Was there any other questions?
Yeah, do we have any other questions in the chat? I didn't see anything pop up. Let me scroll up a little. No,
it's okay if not. I just want to make sure that while we're all together, we've got this time to share. And I just want to thank you guys also for having me tonight. It's so lovely to see you, Nicole, and see other people on the chat. I'm not alone in this world with my family. We're not on an island.
Right. I know. I think we've all been working from home just a little too long.
It's been a long time. I actually did this insane thing, and I put my entire family in an RV over the summer because I got a little crazy and decided we had to go see the Grand Canyon. And I blogged, which I'd never done before. I blogged every day from my trip. So if you want to find me on medium.com, my name is Susie Wagner. It might be Susie C. Wagner, but I think it's Susie Wagner on Medium. And it's mostly me complaining about how hot the RV was and how something went wrong every day. But I stand by, it was one of the best things we've ever done as a family, and I would totally do it again. And it felt safe. You travel with your little pod across the world.
An RV, that's probably the best way to travel right now.
I mean, certainly in like June, my daughter graduated in the back of an RV while doing her college orientation simultaneously. It was a very 2020 kind of an experience, but we survived it. So it did really well.
Right. So I am dropping a link into the chat. If we don't have any other questions, that is the link for our networking session. So we'll all be able to see everyone's faces instead of being on the webinar one. It won't be open for another few minutes until I close this one out, but I'm thinking we don't have any more questions. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Susie. This was great. I loved all of this information. I have sticky notes worth of notes that I've taken over here.
Well, I put my email, so if you think of anything, hit me up. It's no big deal. And Nicole, I'll also send you a copy of the presentation in case you need it for any reason.
Absolutely. We'll put it up on our website, on our chapter resources. That way only our members can access it.
Smart.
Yeah.
Lock it down.
Lock it down. You
All
got to
right.
join to get the good stuff. All right. Thanks. Thanks for
Bye.
coming. Thanks, Susie. Join us on our networking session, and we'll see you in March for our Education Day. It was so great to see everyone in the chat.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.